Okay, we're here with Eric Bissell. We're going to discuss Daniel 12. Got a little intimate gathering here around the table. Eric, bring it in.
There's discussion about which style of letter did the Almighty write with his finger on the tables of stone. Some people say that it was in what we call modern Hebrew, and because scribes were supposed to copy exactly when they were writing the Torah scrolls, like Moshe would have written the first scroll, other people he gave them to the leaders of the tribes, perhaps they would have written. Each king was supposed to write. It says a copy, in some places it says two copies, depending on how you translate that word. The first order of business when he became a king was to copy the Torah scroll. So somewhere floating around, buried or disintegrated, or maybe in a cave somewhere, should be Torah scroll written in David's hand, perhaps Solomon's hand, and we can guess that a bunch of the kings had no regard and didn't do it, which is why they went astray. But the question is, what style of letter would they have written? If it was written in modern on the tables of stone, then I would expect that Moshe's version and David's and Solomon's and everybody else's should have been written in modern. From my understanding, there's no record of the modern script before 500 BC, which was the era of Ezra. Ezra, Nehemiah, and Daniel actually were about 500 BC. So what happened was the kingdom of Babylon under Nebuchadnezzar had gone in and taken captive the southern kingdom, and Daniel was amongst, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they were amongst the captives, they were taken in. At the very last chapter of Daniel, the archangel Gabriel comes and speaks to him. Now, after this period of time, shortly later, Cyrus, the Persian, takes over the Babylonian kingdom, and Yahweh puts on his heart that he should send the Jewish people, the southern kingdom of Yehudah, back to the land and finance the rebuilding of the temple and the walls and their houses and reestablish. And at that time, Ezra, who was a scribe, Nehemiah was the governor, had brought a Torah scroll written in modern Hebrew. And when you say, well, how did he get this modern Hebrew? Well, the Torah scrolls were always written in modern Hebrew. The problem is, from my understanding, I don't know of any artifacts of modern Hebrew pre-existing about 500 BC. Now, if somebody out there knows of one, that'd be nice to know. The point is, if it was written in modern, then how did Ezra get it? Well, he was rooting around in the museum or the stash, the depository of artifacts that they pillaged from various nations, and he found this Torah scroll, and he picked it up and carried it with him to Jerusalem. However, if it was the case that the Almighty wrote with his finger in some Paleo-Hebrew type of font, then where did Ezra get the modern script? It wouldn't have been on Torah scrolls, because all the Torah scrolls would have been written in Paleo. To complicate the matter, any artifacts, such as they found a silver scroll with, I believe it was the Aaronic benediction written on it, in Israel somewhere a few years ago, it was written in Paleo. Plus there's a Leviticus scroll written completely in Paleo. And then there's, I think it's Isaiah, but it's certainly a scroll written in modern. However, the name spelled Yud-He-Vav-He is written in Paleo, as if it was too sacred to transpose into modern, though the entire rest of the script was in modern letters. It suggests that the original orthography was Paleo, ancient Hebrew, and there's various different fonts or formats of that. Orthography, orthography as it's called, the letter style. But that would have mean that somebody had to take the authority or have the audacity to change the letter font from a Paleo script into the modern script and then pass it off as sacred. And Ezra would have gone along with it. And how did that happen? Well, it was about 70 years that they were in, or exactly 70 years, that they were in captivity in Babylon, out of the land. So there wasn't a whole lot of time. If it was Paleo that came into captivity and modern that comes out, then somebody had to do something to those letters and hand it to Ezra, and Ezra said, I recognize the authority to have this be the new font, brought it with him back to Jerusalem, and then started writing scrolls and teaching people how to read this modern character set. So, who would have done that? So we go to Daniel chapter 12, starting in verse 4. So Jeff, would you like to read that?
But you, Daniel, keep these words secret and seal up the book until the time of the end. Many will rush here and there as knowledge increases.
Okay, stop right there. This version says, as for you, Daniel, obscure the matters and seal the book until the time of the end. Which book is he referring to?
The Torah.
How do you know that that's the book he's talking about?
Well, it would have to be. That was their most sacred writings. That was what they...
But it doesn't say
No,
that it's the Torah
It
here.
doesn't say it.
Okay, so if this says, seal the book until the time of the end, I've heard my whole life, ever since I was a little kid, these are the last days. This is the time of the end. So if he's supposed to seal the book, and you say it's the Torah literally is otherwise known as the Pentateuch, which is the first 5 books of the Bible. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. Here they are. They're not sealed. What did Daniel do if he sealed the Torah?
He hid the understanding.
How do you know that?
Well, I guess the real value would be in the true understanding, or the true way to translate it, right?
What's there not to understand? These words are written in plain Hebrew on this side and plain English on this side. How can you not have the true understanding? When Yeshua left, he said, I will not leave you alone, comfortless, but I will send the Comforter, and he will lead you into the whole truth. So the Ruach HaKodesh, the Christians refer to him as the Holy Spirit, as a him, as the third part of the Trinity, but it's his job to see to it that the truth is revealed. So if you're suggesting that the truth has been hidden, then that means the Holy Spirit hasn't been doing his job for, this is 500 BC, that's 2,500 years. So how do you explain that?
I can't.
Oh. I was hoping you had an answer there.
It's pretty clear, he says, until the time of the end.
Right.
End of what?
Until the proper time for these things to be revealed.
Okay, so if Yeshua is going to say, I'm going to leave you the Ruach HaKodesh, and he will lead you into the truth, the fact that something is obscured doesn't preclude that he has still revealed truth. But it's just a question of whether it's the whole truth, nothing but the truth, or whether there's some other business going on between here and here. But what I'm saying is, you'd have to back up in the narrative a little bit to see whether he indicates anything about the Torah. No, we're not going to get into that, but he's talking about what happens at the time of the end. And then in Daniel 3, or 12:3, he says, now let me back up even more. Many of those who sleep in the dusty earth will awaken. That's kind of a resurrection, is what it sounds like. These, or which is to say some, for everlasting life, and these, some others, for shame and for everlasting abhorrence. There's a picture there of the heaven and hell motif. Verse 3, the wise will shine like the radiance of the firmament, and those who teach righteousness to the multitudes will shine, in parentheses, like the stars forever and ever. As for you, Daniel, so he's telling him about what's happening at the time of the end, and then now he comes back to Daniel and he addresses him. And he says, as for you, obscure the matters. Could you hand me, Kurt, that dictionary right over there, the red dictionary? Obscure the matters and seal the book until the time of the end. This says, let many muse and let knowledge increase. Muse is where we get the word for music and entertainment. So let many just kind of entertain themselves and let knowledge increase. That's the way it reads there. And how did yours read?
What verse was it again? Many will rush here and there as knowledge increases.
Many will rush here and there as knowledge increases. And this says, let many muse and let knowledge increase. Do you see any difference in any of that?
Yeah, it sounds like for a while they're just kind of like taking their time, you know, but and then in this version they're moving a little faster, like life is lived at a faster pace.
I've heard people say, look, we have computers and such things, so knowledge has increased, and people are running around in cars and airplanes and spaceships, and so they're running to and fro. Well, if this is the time of the end, because that's the sign or the evidence that it's such a time that these words should then be apparently unhidden, unsealed. So where's the book? You said it's the Torah, but we have the Torah and it seems to be unsealed. It's right here. Where's the book? We, by legal right, if he was only supposed to hide the words and seal the book until the time of the end, this being the time of the end, we should be able to get access to the book, right? Where is it?
I think it's in the version of the writing.
You're not going along with the game. The point is, where's the book? Have anybody ever heard a sermon talking about where the book is? Or the fact that there's something that's going to be revealed before the end is over? Because if we wait right to the end and he says, okay, here's the words, here's the book, it's been hidden all this time, then that means somebody for a long time, if this is now, then it's been 2,500 years, more or less, that a whole bunch of people had no access to the matters which are obscured and the book that was sealed. And if we're suggesting that this is the time, then we should have some insights that none of them had. And it wasn't their fault they didn't have it. And it wasn't the devil that kept them from it. It's Yahuwah himself having told Gabriel to tell Daniel to do something. So here's what these two words mean that are translated as hide and seal. One of them is spelled het tav mem, chatam, and it means to set a seal upon, to affix your signature, conclude, finish, or subscribe to a periodical like a magazine or a newspaper. In other words, sign your signature, and that means you're now locked into something to run a certain circuit, and you're going to keep getting that magazine, even if you get sick of it, until the subscription runs out. It also means to be closed up or stopped, or induced to sign. It's an authorized signatory, like an underwriter, to sign documents. So Daniel was told to do that. Daniel was said, you now are authorized to do something with your signature or your own abilities to make sure that this thing doesn't get opened up until it's been decreed that a certain amount of time, as signed up as by a subscription, way in the future somewhere. Here's the other word spelled samic tav mem, to stop up, to close, to express oneself vaguely, and an indefinite expression, an anonymous opinion in general, something unknown, which is to say vague, uncertain, neutral, indefiniteness. If you have somebody who writes a poem and they don't know who wrote it, they say anonymous. He was told to make these words of anonymous understanding. You have no idea what they're really saying. So the question is, how did he do that? I would suggest that what Daniel did was change. We have this little card here. These are the modern Hebrew letters, the Sophite letters, which are appearing at the end of a word. Only these 5 letters, and only at the end. They're somewhat similar to what we would call capital letters. But we in English use capital letters at the beginning of the word, and every letter could be a capital, whereas in Hebrew it's only at the end and only these 5 letters. It's like a mini alphabet which has its own understanding, which we're going to get to in another video, about Butcher Boy. That's the video we were talking about, the Sophite letters. Okay, just so you know, on that video. This is a Paleo font, and this is the key to understanding the Paleo, which is the Mishkan pattern, which we'll have to talk about another time. But let me point out this letter sequence. I maintain that the letters are not just pictures and phonetic sounds, but they mean something. And if you know what the letters mean, then when someone describes to you, like if someone says water, what letter, if you know what the letters mean, does anybody know what letter comes to mind?
Mem.
Mem. Why? Because mayim, it means water. And if somebody said plowing, now 2 different letters could come to mind. Do you know which 2? The letter aleph is an ox which pulls the plow. The letter zayin is not only a weapon or an axe that chops things off, but it also could be a plowshare, a tool which cuts things open. No, that's a gimel. The zayin would be the green one there. But so what I'm saying is that if you mention something like, if I say to swear, does anybody know which letter comes to mind? By knowing the meaning? To swear. Let me give you a clue. The word to swear in Hebrew is shin bet ayin. Shavah. It's also the same as the number 7. The 7th letter is a zayin. So if you know to swear is the 7th letter, because the number 7 literally is the word to swear a vow, then if somebody were to say, I'm swearing a vow, then you 7 it. So a young lady getting married in, from what I understand, the traditional Hebrew Jewish culture, circles her husband 7 times. What does that mean? She's swearing a vow of fidelity to him. So by us keeping the 7th day, keeping the 7 festivals, we're keeping the Shemitah year, we're basically walking around 7 times and swearing a vow to Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh as our Kadoshi, our betrothed, the one we're loyal to. I'm mentioning that for a reason. I'm saying that Daniel was authorized and then put his expertise to changing the letter format, not the format, but the font, the style, the orthography, from the Paleo to the modern. Now, if he did that, where's the proof of it? The Paleo letters mean something. So if you were going to retain the value, retain the meaning of the letters, so that that won't get lost. Because if it, now, some people say, well, the modern letter has no meaning, but it actually does, and there's some, you might say, esoteric authors of Jewish writings where they say, there's a book saying, let me show you the secret meanings in the modern. And they'll say, for example, the Gimel is the letter with a foot, so it's giving. Dalet is the poor letter, but it still has to receive, so it has its hand back here like this. And everything means something. But it's really hard to see. They make these books, and they're very interesting. But what I'm saying is, there is a value to the modern letters, but in Paleo, it's perfectly clear. Now, if you could say, well, but nobody really knows, and so it's somewhat ambiguous, one way for Daniel to make sure that what he did was registered and archived without getting lost would be to encrypt the meanings of the words in their proper chronological sequence order as some sort of narrative where it was hidden in plain sight, to where you wouldn't know that's what you were reading, but if you knew what you were reading, you'd see the meanings of the letters, and he'd lock them in. The meaning of the aleph, then the meaning of the bet, and the meaning of the gimel. So for example, if aleph, which it does, means ox, and bet means house, and gimel means camel, and dalet means door, then I could tell you a story and say, the ox walked, or the ox was in the house, and the camel was at the door. Now you might say, what kind of a story is that? But if you knew Hebrew, you'd say, hey, that's aleph-bet, gimel, dalet, A, B, C, D. But if you didn't know, ox, house, camel, door, they'd go right past you. Now, the thing about Hebrew letters is that there's a simple meaning, like ox, house, camel, door, but then there's numerous deeper meanings. Now, right out of the top, when Yahuwah says that his signature is that when he says something, it happens. As I've planned, so shall it be. As I've purposed, so shall it come about. The word that goes out of my mouth won't return void. It will accomplish that matter that I set it forth to do. If you know the meanings of the letters, what he's saying is, I am, my signature is aleph-tav, aleph-tav, aleph-tav. The ox is like the aleph. Aleph means ox. It's shaped like the head of an ox. You yoke it up and you pull the plow right to the tav. The letter tav means mark or sign, stop here. And when you cross the sticks, the ox would pull that plow right to the tav and then stop. And they turn around, put a sign here, and pull back. So aleph and tav is literally the ox yoked up, pulling the plow, drawing the line at the furrow to the tav. That's simply what it means. So if I could say, what the ox does, pulling to the conclusion of the matter, which was the intent of the purpose of yoking the ox, if that's really aleph-tav, then when Yahweh says, as I have planned and intended, so it shall come about and happen, is also aleph-tav, then I can read this in the book of Daniel chapter 12, verse 4. As for you, Daniel, Now he's going to give him a job description. This is an aleph. Obscure the matters and seal the book until the time of the end. Then there's something else. Let many muse and knowledge increase. Well, what is that? Well, there's something in there. The next letter in the letter sequence is a bet, which means to put something in, to hide, like in a house, or wrap it up in a body, to envelop it and enclose it, like DNA is hidden in a seed so that when it opens up, it produces the plant, the fruit, the body. So bet is a body, is a house to embody, and there's something else in that next section. So what I'm going to show you here is to the rest of the chapter 12 of Daniel, and there are 13 verses, that incrementally, if you think incrementally, like cogs on a wheel, teeth on a gear, click, 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 aleph, bet, gimel, dalet, hey, vav, and each next letter, I'm going to read the next phrase and tell you how it equals the deeper meaning of what each letter is, thus validating that it's been orchestrated and locked in by this narrative in a way that you'd never know if you didn't know the meanings of the letters. So here's the plan. Aleph, Daniel, hide the words and seal the book till the time of the end. Bet, it's going to be wrapped up and many are going to run to and fro. Knowledge shall increase, but actually the word running to and fro is shin tet tet, or yod shin tet tet vav, which means apostasy, which means going errantly, and it's from what some people say, it's a picture of a ship with oars, and instead of rowing in unison and going a certain direction, the oars are splashing all over the place and the ship is going nowhere other than erratic, frantic, what's going on, where is it? And what are they going to be looking for? But he's indicating that even though it was the Ruach's job to disclose the truth, it's also been his job, according to this, to obfuscate, to obscure the truth until this occasion. Then the next letter is Gimel. Now what's a Gimel? It's a camel. What does a camel do? A camel walks back and forth. A camel's neck, like this shape, is like a boomerang, the head and the neck. Just so you know, whoever's listening, there's a bunch of people who know Hebrew and are really smart guys, and they'll disagree with everything I'm saying. Just so you know. But the head and neck shape like a boomerang, you throw it out and it comes back. The camel is the ship of the desert, the truck of the sand. So what do you do with a truck? You load it up, it drives out, drops it off, picks something else up, comes back this way, you drop it off, load it up. It goes back and forth. Then I, Daniel, looked, and behold, two others are standing, one at this side of the riverbank and one at that side of the riverbank. Now if I just sit here and read this, where's the Gimel? But if I'm standing here and looking, I'm going to exaggerate. I see one on this side of the riverbank and one on that side of the riverbank. See that guy over there? And there's another one over there. This idea of back and forth is a Gimel concept. In this phrase, this third position is a Gimel concept. Now, just to double check, the fourth position is the dalet, which is a door. That should be something about the next concept. He says, one said to the man clothed in linen who was above the waters of the river, wait a minute, there's one on this side of the river and one on that side of the river, that's Gimel. And now there's one above the river, I'm exaggerating, there's one above the river, a man clothed in white linen. Now, we don't know who that guy is. Is he an angel? Is he a demon? Is it a bird that looks like a man? We don't know what it is. But hey, wait a minute, he gives us a clue. He's clothed in white linen. Now, white linen typically means works of righteousness according to the instructions of the Torah. Is there any man who could possibly qualify, just no names, but just as a concept, is there any man that might qualify to be clothed in white linen who is above, and typically I've heard it said that waters of waters represent humanity. Is there a man above all the rest of humanity who is clothed in white linen that Daniel might see? Regardless of who that is, I would suggest it's a Messiah figure. A specially regarded, Mashiach can mean anointed, it can also mean the tangible communication. Another way to define the word Messiah. But this guy is some side of Messiah figure, whoever that is. That's the fourth position. Fifth, the letter Hey. And so he says, how long till the concealed end? So somebody's saying to this guy, hey! Now, what's the meaning of the word hey? To reveal, like, hey! So the fifth letter, hey, lines up with, hey, you, how long till the concealed end? Next letter is vav. What's vav? Well, the vav is number 6. And also, some people say that, like, 666 is the number of man. So here we now have the vav position referring to a man, and he says, I heard that man clothed in linen who's above the waters of the river. Now what we're doing is linking the same guy in the dalet position to be the same guy in the vav position, and he's that guy clothed in linen above the waters of the river. That dalet guy is the vav guy. Now, interestingly enough, there was a certain man who people regard as the Messiah who claimed to be the door. And the word dalet means door, which is the 4th number, and he claimed to also provide the job function of showing people, showing humanity, and especially Israel, the door back to access into the Father's house, which means here's the dalet where you can gimel, returning back to the bet of the aleph. So you can read the letter sequence going backwards, and it still fits that this vav man, hey, let me tell you something, this is the dalet where you can gimel to the bet of the aleph. You understand? Okay. And what he does say is that, now we're looking through the 7th letter, which is the Zion, which means, remember it says to swear, is also the number 7. It says, he lifted his right hand and his left hand. So if I'm going to stand here and lift my left hand and my right hand, hey, guess what? It looks just like that letter Vav. Now that's a slightly different orthography than some other people use, but that letter Vav is the 6th letter, and that's the man who is the dalet, and it says he swore by him who lives forever. This is the life source of the world. He swore that by the life source of the world. Well, to swear is the 7. So now we've gone right through the letter sequence, Aleph through Zion, and then he says that it would be for time, times, and half a time. Now wait a minute, the next letter is het. What's that got to do with time, times, and half a time? He's describing an extent. He's giving us this perimeter of time blocked into this space. The letter het means fence. It's a perimeter. It's a designated extent with a boundary and a frontier. Hence it fits. And then he gives the next letter being tet, which is something round, which is like a round basket that you throw little crumbles of things into the round basket. And as tet, it means to be filled to the fold. It's the number 9. He said, upon, now this is the finish, like a full basket, upon the completion of the fragmenting of the hand of the Kadosh people, all these things will be finished. Well, we just said that a full basket is something you throw little crumbles of stuff in. That's what a basket's for. That fits the sign of the letter tet. Everything fits. So the next letter is a yod, and a yod is a hand that grasps something. To this letter shape right here, where you grab a hold, or you grab a tool and you make, that's what yod means. And he said, I heard it, but I didn't comprehend it. He couldn't grab it. It's like, what? I don't get what you're saying. Yod. The next letter is kaf, which is an open hand, which is like Yom Kippur, the kaf, the covering, and it's also, can you ask for something with open hands? So he says, my Lord, what is the end of these matters? He's going, please, I couldn't grab it. Would you please give it to me again? Again, if you know the meanings of the letters, it's fitting by type of what each letter means in sequence. The next letter is the mem. Mem is water, but mem is also a womb, or that place where something is hidden, developing and growing until it's time to be birthed open. And then the next letter, nun, is that which is shaped like a lightning bolt. Mem and nun, so this is like this water of an environment where something develops in secret, and then nun is like this fish that jumps out of the water. So what he says here is that, excuse me, he jumped ahead. What is the end of these matters? Is kaf. The next letter is a lamed. Lamed is this shepherd staff of authority, and he says, go, Daniel. As a matter of fact, the parashah lekah means get you out, go. So the letter lamed is to poke or to pull or to compel or impel, and it's the authority. And when he says, go, Daniel, that's the lamed. Now there's the mem. For the matters are obscured, unsealed, until the time of the end. That's like saying something is in the womb, hidden, growing, and developing, until the time that it's the end of the time to seal the matters, in which case they'll be birthed. So then he says, by the way, that in verse 9 is when he said to Daniel, hide the words and seal the book. And then that's in verse 4. Then in verse 9 he says, okay, the words are hidden and sealed. What did Daniel do? Daniel didn't do anything. Daniel was told, hide the words and seal the book till the time of the end. Then Daniel said, I saw one here and there and up there. And he said, wait, so is this? And all of a sudden he says, okay, the words are hidden and sealed. It's like, really? How? What happened? We missed the whole thing. The noon. They will be elucidated, clarified, and refined by many. Well, this letter noon is the action, the lightning bolt. It's stuff going on. Elucidated, clarified, refined by many. That kind of means many translations while people trying to figure out, what does this mean? What does this mean? What does this mean? There was, my brother had like 80 translations. Now I think there's a couple hundred English translations, and there's more all the time. Trying to figure out, what do these words mean? Okay, the next letter is a psalmic, which is kind of like a vine and branches, like a picture of the menorah. And it has to do like a good servant. I'm saying thematically, it's like a good servant guarding over the vineyard. And Yeshua talked in parables about there being wicked servants who abused their job position and pillaged and ruined, versus the righteous servant who did what he was told and bore fruit and watched over the beared fruit and that kind of thing. So the next phrase is, the wicked will act wickedly. What is wickedness? Not doing what you were told. So the psalmic is, I'm the vine, you're the branches, bear fruit. If you don't bear fruit, that's the definition of wickedness. If you do bear good fruit, that's righteousness, or doing what you're told is righteousness. It fits. The next letter is the ayin, which has to do with seeing and understanding, and he says, none of the wicked will understand. Ayin has to do with understanding. The next letter is a pei, which is a mouth, and then he says, but the wise will understand. What's that got to do with the mouth? His mouth is his words of instruction. He said, you saw no image, not male or female, not a fish, a bird, a plant, an animal, a man, nothing. You heard a voice. Go back and read these words. Listen to the voice of the invisible one, which is why the aleph is the silent letter, and the word Bereshit, which is the beginning of Genesis, starts with a B, because that's the construct state of the invisible, immaterial aleph state. So we were told to listen to the words of the invisible one. We were not given an image or a portrait or any shape to reference. And the wise will understand that. The next letter is the Zadi, which is in the set-apart place. It lines up in the Mishkan pattern with the Ark of the Covenant. It was in a place called the Kadosh Kodashim, sometimes translated as Holy of Holies. Nobody could see it. It was set apart. And in the Ark of the Covenant was the 10 Commandments, which is the declaration of what righteousness is. Now, interestingly enough, the letter Zadi is a word. Zadi means righteous. Zadik is the righteous one. And what he says here, verse 11, from the time the daily offering was removed, and the mute abomination put in place, comma, well, here's the Zadi. The daily offering was removed, and the mute abomination put in place. What does your translation say? Verse 11.
From the time the regular burnt offering is taken away, and the abomination that causes desolation is set up.
Abomination of desolation. Well, this says mute abomination. So what is it? If it lines up with this Zadi, which is the 10 Commandments in the Ark of the Covenant, which is a sign of his presence, and if we did what he said, his presence would abide, then what this is saying is that if you change the 10 Commandments, or if you say they're not any good any longer, they're not pertinent, they don't matter, they're worthless, they're fulfilled, they're done away with, you have muted the words of life, hence causing desolation. If you twist, distort, and change them, they bring abomination. If you have a tumor, it means something like cancer gets so solid that it doesn't allow blood flow, and then things get distorted and clogged up and backlogged, and that's what causes illness and death. When you mute the words of Yahuwah's true Ruach, things can't flow, things can't live, things don't thrive, things become distorted and permutated into distortions, hence the mute abomination which desolates, lining up with exactly this letter. Now the next letter is a kuf, which literally means the back of the head. It's pictured by the sun on the horizon, or the eye of a needle, And it basically is a long reach. The word kof is a monkey, and like monkeys have a long arm to reach or a long tail. It's something way out there in the future or way back there like on the horizon. And what this says now is, from that time is 1,290 days, or 90 years. He's giving an extent. The first time he gave an extent was the letter het, which was the fence, and now he's given a second reference to an extent, which is the kuf, which is this long reach, like this covering. Interestingly enough, the word spelled het, kuf, refers to his commandments. So it's like the box of treasure and its lid, which has been sealed up, because the treasure is the blessings that Yahweh promises people for doing what he said. What he said is het kuf. And if you don't regard the matters between the het and the kuf, which we just talked about, which are represented in the Mishpan pattern by all the festivals and the days of creation and the Beatitudes, they're all right in here, then what you've missed is his treasure box. And he says to the time that that be locked down, you might say, is 1,290 years. So here's the overview, like with the letter kuf, a helicopter view of what's going on. Now the next letter is a resh, which is mean an exalted man. It's a head and neck and like a flag planted, and it's this, this territory. And he says, praiseworthy is he who waits and reaches 1,335 years. Praiseworthy is the man. The letter resh is a praiseworthy man. Now the next letter is a sheen, which literally means either teeth or fire. It's the one-letter monogram of El Shaddai, meaning the Almighty, as it's translated, which has to do with provisions to his people and destroying his adversaries. And this says, as for you, go to your end, and you will rest. Go to your end. Live out your days. Sheen, like teeth, like fire, is like this picture of kind of a spirit essence, whereas mem being water is kind of a material essence. But he's saying, as for you, Daniel, burn out your days that you've been given, and then you will rest. The last letter is tav, which means the end, and he says, then arise for your portion at the end of days, which is the promise of the covenant. All of us will arise to our portion, either for, as he said in verse 3, some will rise for shame, everlasting abhorrence, but many will rise for everlasting life. And the wise, who understand what this life is about, and that the message of life, of what it means to choose life or choose death, wrapped up in these words of the covenant, the wise will shine like the radiance of the firmament, and those who teach righteousness, which is doing what he said, as per the covenant that he made with Israel, will shine like the stars forever and ever. That's the promise. That's the X at the end saying, you betcha, you better count on it because your life depends on it, both now and forevermore. So that's the message of Daniel. That's the end of the book, end of the book of Daniel. So there, by Daniel writing this, did he actually see this and talk to these people? Maybe he did, maybe he didn't, maybe it was provided him. But nevertheless, what I see is that it locks in actual sequence, the meaning of these 22 letters by their real meaning, not just house, excuse me, this is the simple meaning. Ox, house, camel, door, window, nail, weapon, fence, basket, some people say snake because it goes round, grabbing, working hand, open palm of the hand, shepherd's staff, water, fish, or that which jumps out of the water, like the baby jumping out of the womb, a support, like a trellis, eyeball for understanding, mouth, hook or sprout, fish hook, back of the head, teeth and fire, mark. But this is the other way to read it, and you'll have to put this video. Aleph, the silent letter, the omnipotent, eternal creator of the universe. Bet, the one who made the matter, will put himself, because aleph is a prefix, means I am or I will put himself into the material form of the matter, being birthed, and this is an embryonic shape. So he's going to come through the form of some kind of embryo, gimmeling, traveling to Dalet, that speaks of earth. That's, Dalet is number 4, it's a door. You got earth, air, fire, water, north, south, east, west. The elements of air, fire, water, earth, air, fire, water.
Wind.
Earth, yeah, that'd be the air. Anyway, the point is, fourness speaks of, trying to go faster here for time. Fourness speaks of earthness. Dalet is a birth canal, as it were, this pelvic, this top of the the top of the hourglass is this coming down to this. The word dalet means to diminish one's self. So he who is the omnipotent one reduced himself down, becoming vulnerable. That's what dalal means, to the earth, revealed as the man, hey, vav, revealed as the man who was Zion, noteworthy, spectacular, but at the same time diminished his prestige to be put to the weapon, killed by the weapon. And as a note, the word baged, bet gimel dalet, means clothing, camouflage, to conceal the true design of. And when Pilate said, behold the man, ecce homo in Latin, when he says, behold, hey, vav, the man, this guy that we put the weapon to, he was fulfilling the prophecy that hey, vav, Zion meant this man who was baged as a human, though he was coming from the omnipotent eternal side into the humanity form, being birthed through an embryo, he would be put to the weapon, his bagged camouflage torn off, be thrown into a het, a tomb, tet, the round stone rolled in front of it, and yod, the Roman seal, put on it, but aleph means my, or I will, and yod means my as a suffix. So these 10 letters mean this is what I'm going to do. Locked into the tomb. Kaf, literally, at the end means this is yours. So this is his gift to you, unto, for the sake of, mem, being born unto noon, this life, this other life, jumping out unto this other dimension of his reality within his kingdom, such that Samik, being like the shape of the menorah, I'm the vine, you're the branches, so that you can be grafted into me, of me, whereby I will give you something to do of integral importance in the kingdom, which is bearing fruit. The eyeball looks like a fruit with a seed in it, and he says the fruit will be tested and evaluated such that whatever fruit you bear is that which is you will bear. You will be encumbered with, not only in this life, but in the world to come, such as you do, so it will be measured to you. Pay the mouth, he will speak, he will guide, he will counsel, he will give you insight, and then the mouth represents the festival of Sukkot, which is where we're at here at 2015, where we're all speaking, eating, rejoicing together. The fellowship of the Kodashim, represented also by the pay. Zadi is a picture of a sprout, what looked like a dead stick, like Aaron's rod that budded, that was put with the Ark of the Covenant, which is a picture of this man that was the Aleph who bet gimel daleted as the Hey Vav who was Zion, thrown into the Het Tet, was then sprouted back to life. Zadi, after he zadied, which was a reference saying, remember, you will also sprout back to life. Kuf, he rose up. And as the Talmudim were looking at him, the Melech, the angel, said, hey, he's coming back the same way, you know. So the kuf is like this long reach to say, not only did he ascend, but he's going to come back after a long while. And at the return, Resh, this time he's the exalted man, the dignitary, as Sheen, El Elyon, the Almighty, El Shaddai, coming back to slaughter his foes and to give the provisions as he promised to his people according to Tav, the terms of the covenant. And Reshin Tav is a net, a trap, a snare, or like a grocery bag. You go to the grocery store, Kuf is shaped like a sickle, so he comes back to harvest the word spelled Aleph, Reshin Tav, is betrothed. So he will come back, Kuf, gather up his betrothed and take them away as he promised to the place that he had prepared, which Yeshua told us before he left. That's the message in the aleph-bet. Retained by Daniel, that you can see in the Paleo, but you just don't quite see it when you turn it into Greek or English or Latin or even modern Hebrew. Wow. That work for you, Terry?
Yeah, that'll work. That'll give us something to think about anyway, huh? All right, everybody, back to the sukkahs. We got a whole day more bondage tomorrow for Sabbath, so get some rest. Get some rest so you can rest. Shalom. Thanks, Eric.